top stories. Iran has launched a major counterattack against Israel, firing around 150 ballistic missiles in waves at Israeli cities, killing 2 people and injuring dozens, according to local officials. The retaliatory attack began after Israel launched huge attacks on Iran, targeting its nuclear facilities, missile sites, and killing top military leaders and nuclear scientists. An investigation into the Air India plane crash that killed more than 240 people on board is focusing on the engine, flaps and landing gear after a black box was recovered on Friday. Civilians on the ground have also been killed as DNA testing has begun on the remains of unidentifiable victims. U.S. Marines deployed to Los Angeles have made the first known detention of a civilian, part of a rare use of military force to support domestic police. This comes amid national protests over immigration arrests, with further expected across the United States ahead of President Donald Trump's military parade in Washington. Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the migrant returned to the US after being wrongfully deported to El Salvador, has pleaded not guilty after being accused of conspiracy to smuggle migrants into the United States. He will remain detained for now ahead of his trial. Japan and the US have held a 6th round of trade talks in Washington, exploring the possibility of a new agreement, according to Japan's top negotiator, Ryosei Hakuzawa. His comments come amid trade tensions after Trump announced sweeping tariffs, with the current deadline on a pause ending on the 8th of July. Well, meanwhile, US President Donald Trump has approved Nippon Steel's $14.9 billion bid for US Steel. The merger with Japan's largest steelmaker has been given the green light, but with conditions requiring a security agreement with the Treasury. Petrol bombs have been thrown and homes have been targeted in a 5th night of violence in Northern Ireland, with trouble moving across regions. The unrest began on Monday over the alleged sexual assault of a girl in Ballymena and the subsequent arrest of 2 14-year-old boys. Kanye West has made a surprise court visit in New York, spending 30 minutes inside to support Sean Diddy Combs during his sex trafficking trial. Meanwhile, a juror faces dismissal over inconsistencies about where he lives. The music mogul denies all charges. We start this hour in the Middle East. Our top story is tensions are boiling over as Iran and Israel exchange deadly strikes. Just hours ago, Iranian forces said they shot down Israeli drones on a reconnaissance mission in the northwest of the country. That came just after a to and fro between Israel and Iran, conducting strikes on each other. First, Israel launched what it called preemptive strikes on Iran's nuclear and military infrastructure, reportedly killing at least 78 people, including top generals and scientists. Iran hit back with waves of missiles and drones. Sirens blared across Jerusalem and Tel Aviv as explosions lit up the night sky in the latest round of what Iran calls Operation Honest Promise 3. Israel's emergency services say 34 have been injured in the barrage and that 2 have been confirmed dead. Israel claims its strikes were months in the making and says it coordinated in advance with the United States. Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, called Israel's attack a great crime, while Tehran's UN envoy confirmed dozens killed and over 300 wounded. Missiles also struck near homes in central Israel. Burned cars and damaged buildings were seen in Tel Aviv and Ramat Gan. In Iran, explosions echoed across Tehran and fires broke out at Mehrabad airport. Israel says the operation was aimed at halting Iran's nuclear ambitions after the UN censored Tehran last week. Meanwhile, the US has denied involvement but confirmed helping intercept missiles. It has moved troops and ships in the region and evacuated some diplomats. On the ground, Israel is bracing for more. Troops are being deployed, reservists called up, and air defences are on high alert. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the campaign could last up to 2 weeks and insists the message is for Iran's regime and not its people. Let's have a listen to his full declaration.
The Islamic regime, which has oppressed you for nearly 50 years, threatens to destroy my country, the State of Israel. The objective of Israel's military operation is to remove this threat, both the nuclear threat and the ballistic missile threat to Israel. In the past 24 hours, we've taken out top military commanders, senior nuclear scientists, the Islamic regime's most significant enrichment facility, and a large portion of its ballistic missile arsenal. More is on the way. And the time has come for you to unite around your flag and your historic legacy by standing up for your freedom from an evil and oppressive regime. It has never been weaker. Our fight is with our common enemy, a murderous regime that both oppresses you and impoverishes you.
Iran, meanwhile, accuses Israel of targeting civilians and vows further retaliation. The region now stands on the edge with fears of a wider war growing by the hour. Well, joining us first to discuss this escalating situation that has extreme ramifications, not just in the region, but also across the world. Yossi Kapawasa, an Israeli intelligence and security expert who is joining us from Tel Aviv. Yossi, firstly, I hope that you are safe. I hope that your loved ones are well. Can you just tell us and talk us through what your experiences were overnight after this barrage of ballistic missile strikes from Iran?
Good morning. Yes, we are in the midst of a confrontation that is very violent, and we were on the receiving end of this barrage of Iranian missiles that caused the death of 2 or 3 Israelis and a lot of damage. But we have to do that because the Iranians were on their way to achieving a nuclear weapon, and it's a regime that says that it is determined and committed to destroying Israel, and we had to make sure that they don't have these weapons. I mean, the international community has accepted that the nuclear project of Iran is not for peaceful purposes, and it has all kinds of reasons to be worried about what the Iranians are actually doing. And that's why we had to act now, because the Iranians not only were accumulating a lot of highly enriched uranium, but they were also starting the activation of their weaponization program, taking this highly enriched uranium and turning it into a bomb. And we couldn't wait any longer. I think everybody in the world understands why this was necessary. And we hope that by the end of this operation, the Iranians would not have the capability to produce nuclear weapons, and that we should be able to put in place some sort of a regime that would verify that the Iranians don't try again to build the capability to produce these weapons.
Yossi, is there a thought that could be had that there were nuclear talks set up for Sunday that Iran have now said are not going to happen with the United States, and that diplomacy was still an option? This attack, Benjamin Netanyahu and yourself saying, was necessary, this preemptive strike, stopping the ability for Iran to have a nuclear weapon. And it seems from reports that it has been successful in damaging those sites. But with diplomacy ongoing, is there a potential here that the escalation and the ramifications that may have caused could have come too early, as diplomatic efforts were still ongoing and discussions and dialogues were still taking place?
You know, the Iranians were given the opportunity to reach an agreement with the Americans. They refused. The Americans gave them an offer that could have solved the problem, but they refused. And the position that they were supposed to present on Sunday was the refusal to accept that they will not have the capability to enrich uranium on their own soil, and by that to reach an agreement that would solve the problem. So we, instead of waiting until this was presented to the Americans, everybody knew this was the position. Instead of waiting until this was presented and lose the capability to enjoy the element of surprise and its benefits, we had to act fast, and the ultimatum given to the Iranians was 60 days, and we operated on the 61st day. And so it's we waited a long time, and we still, by the way, believe that the way out of it is a diplomatic way. We take care of the facilities because the Iranians don't want to have a diplomatic agreement. But if there is a diplomatic agreement that guarantees that Iran doesn't have the nuclear weapon in the future, then we are totally in favor of that.
Yes, Yossi, we only have around a minute or so. As an intelligence expert, you're better placed than most to answer this short question. Now that there are Israeli civilian casualties, now that there are Israeli civilian injuries that have been reported, not confirmed yet from the state, but what is Israel's next step? We've seen the level of strikes that have taken place across Iran. Is the next step further escalation, and what does that entail?
Well, I think the next step is made of two things. First of all, the Iranians are attacking civilians. We are attacking only military targets or nuclear facilities, and that's what we do. They attack deliberately civilians, so we have to deter them from doing that. So I think what we are going to see in the coming days is more effort to destroy the nuclear facilities, more effort to destroy the ballistic missile facilities, and maybe also some efforts to deter Iran from targeting civilians. That can be done by targeting governmental targets or economic targets. We have to decide what way we are going to choose in order to deter Iran from attempting to hit civilians.
Yes, absolutely. Yossi Kupawasa, thank you ever so much for joining us. I hope you and your family remain safe in this time of uncertainty. We stay with this topic now, and global leaders are calling for calm after Israel's strikes on Iran threatened to spiral into a wider war. The UNSC meeting, earlier planned to find a solution for the Gaza crisis, has been roped in to this ongoing tussle as Iran accused the United States of being complicit in Israel's attacks on the Islamic Republic. Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro condemned Israel's actions as criminal and immoral, while China's UN envoy urged that Tel Aviv and other armies halt all risky military actions immediately. Russia's Vladimir Putin strongly condemned the attacks and offered to mediate between Israel and Iran, according to a Kremlin statement. Now from Europe, and French President Emmanuel Macron called for a new dialogue and a return to the nuclear deal. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer and US President Donald Trump also stressed diplomacy over escalation after holding a phone call last night. The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has also said that enough escalation has taken place. It is time to stop. He says peace and diplomacy must prevail. Meanwhile, in Asia, India's Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar spoke with his Iranian counterpart to discuss the latest situation. Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has vowed severe punishment, calling Israel's attack a satanic crime. He said the Islamic Republic's armed forces won't let them go unpunished. Meanwhile, Oman called it a dangerous violation of international law. China, again, demanding an immediate halt to escalation. Turkey's President Erdogan accused Netanyahu of spreading fire throughout the region, while Saudi Arabia slammed Israel's violation of Iran's sovereignty. Tensions are at a breaking point. Global pressure is mounting on a de-escalation. While joining us to continue this discussion on these breaking developments overnight, which again I want to reiterate, don't just have regional ramifications but also potentially global. Dr. Wael Awad, a Middle East affairs expert, is joining us from New Delhi. Dr. Awad, thank you very much for being here. The level of escalation that we have seen in the past 24 to 48 hours is clear. The level of strike that Israel has carried out on Iran and the level of response from Iran. Where does this escalation go next? Whose hands is this in? Is diplomacy an option, or is this now an all-out war?
Israeli made up their mind. The Prime Minister of Israel have been planning this attack, according to Israeli sources, since 8 months. And in fact, ever since the revolution of Iran took place in 1979, it has been an anti-Iranian revolution, and the rift between the two countries continued for years. So therefore, this attack was pre-planned, and the United States was fully aware of it, and therefore he did not say that it is a battle or just a tit for tat. it's a war. And if he declared it into a war, that means you started the war, but you don't know when to end it. And I think now, after Iran have absorbed the first attack by Israel, which has been taken as a violation of the UN charters, that you're attacking a sovereign state unilaterally, and therefore you're taking the law into your own hand, you're declaring that this is a nuclear state and are ambitious to be a nuclear state, what the whole of the world knows that Israel is the undeclared nuclear state, that nobody touched the Israeli arsenals of 150 more than that of nuclear heads. Now attacking a sovereign state, and Iran retaliated in a manner that Tel Aviv recognized that the power of Iranian is not limited to what they have been doing to them. They have been targeting 300 targets, including civilians. And where yesterday we were seeing the picture from Tehran, where more than 48 people died and 386 has been injured, and mostly children and families have been killed. So I don't see a de-escalation of this war, because now the retaliation is heavier than expected.
Yes, Dr. Awad, I apologise to cut in. I have just received some news in from an Iranian news agency citing senior military officials saying that Iran's strikes will continue. This comes after Benjamin Netanyahu said that the Israeli operation could take days, if not weeks. The situation here is becoming more clear with the level of action that we've seen, but this all surrounds an issue over nuclear arms, potential nuclear arms, uranium enrichment, and a nuclear deal. Some context on this: the previous nuclear deal that was agreed with Iran, that Donald Trump withdrew the US from in his first term, took years to agree to. Donald Trump is expecting that Steve Witkoff, a non-diplomat placed as his point man, to come up with this deal in a 60-day timeline. Do you think that the timeline that's been given by the US and that the Israelis have followed is a fair one for Iran?
No, I think they have been deceiving the Iranian. Even the American have taken Iran by surprise, because see, the sixth round of discussion, which was planned for Sunday for tomorrow in Oman, and the Iranian were ready to go for the negotiation, but the amount of the American saying that they are giving you 60 days or 90 days is none of their business. It is an international community. Even the international nuclear agencies have said that we should find a peaceful solution to nuclear Iran if they are going for a nuclear civil program. So if that was the intention of the global community, you can't drag the global community into an open war in a region where you wanted to block the Strait of Hormuz, the Red Sea, the Mediterranean Sea, and you have to destabilize the whole world economy, especially in Asia. So I think there is some sensible country should come forward and stop this genocide and stop this war going on, because we cannot accept such kind of suffering. We live in the Middle East. We know our territories. We know our countries under severe danger that if tomorrow the Muna nuclear site in Israel got hit by the Iranian missile, or Iran is already and then Tanbas has been attacked by the Israelis. Their nuclear radiation has been spreading in this region. Who is going to die? United States is 10,000 miles away from our region. Who is going to die? We are the people who are going to suffer. And I think that is where the responsibility lies on the regional power, on the European Union, on the international community to put an end to this mess and to this kind of an attack by unilaterally country, which is undeclared a nuclear state, attacking a country, thinking of having a nuclear state. Is the way the world should be governed, or are we here having a UN Charter, a UN Security Council to handle issues globally?
Dr. Awad, we are unfortunately out of time, but thank you ever so much for joining us and providing your opinions. This, of course, is an evolving situation, and here on NewsX World, we will continue to bring you all of the updates as we get them. But we move on now, and the NSG and forensic teams are investigating the Air India flight AI-171 crash sites in Ahmedabad, focusing on ruling out foul play by examining blast material. The NDRF and other agencies are collecting debris, including the tail section hanging from the BJ Medical College hostel mess building, which will be brought down for further analysis. The aircraft's black box has been recovered and will provide crucial insights into the crash. Over 40 personnel from the Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau are on site, and DNA identification is underway with 219 samples collected to confirm victim identities. The Ministry of Civil Aviation has constituted a high-level multidisciplinary committee chaired by the Union Home Secretary to examine the causes of this tragic incident and propose strengthened aviation protocols. Gujarat's Home Minister Harsh Sanghvi and Congress President Mallikarjun Kharge are scheduled to visit the site today, while families of British nationals affected by the crash are arriving in Ahmedabad. We move on now to North America, and US Marines deployed to Los Angeles have made their first detention amid rising tensions over federal immigration raids. The detained individual, a US Army veteran, was held before being handed over to Homeland Security. This marks a rare use of active duty military on American soil as protests continue in response to the immigration sweeps. Meanwhile, nationwide demonstrations are expected to surge this weekend, with over 2,000 No Kings protests planned across the country, organised as a direct response to President Trump's upcoming military parade in Washington, D.C., which coincides with his 79th birthday. The movement opposes what they call the administration's expanding use of military force and immigration crackdowns in Los Angeles City. Officials and law enforcement have expressed confidence that they are fully prepared to manage the protests over the weekend. A curfew remains in place downtown, and authorities have pledged to allow peaceful demonstration while cracking down on any violence or property damage. We stay with US immigration, and in America, migrant Kilmar Abrego Garcia remains in custody after being wrongfully deported to El Salvador in March. He returned to the US last week and has now pleaded not guilty to charges of conspiracy to smuggle migrants, transport firearms and drugs. Prosecutors claim Abrego made over 100 trips moving migrants across the country between 2016 and 2025. Two cooperating witnesses have alleged he was a driver for a smuggling ring, but his defence says their testimony is unreliable. Abrego Garcia's lawyers argue he's being targeted to justify his illegal removal. A federal judge is still investigating if the Trump administration violated court orders in his case. Meanwhile, a separate civil case could see officials held in contempt. Abrego Garcia could face life in prison if convicted. The case has already led to a resignation inside the Nashville U.S. Attorney's Office and continues to fuel criticism of Trump's immigration policies. Well, meanwhile, a federal judge has denied the release of Palestinian activist Mahmoud Khalil, a green card holder detained since March without charges. Khalil, a former Columbia University student, is known for his pro-Palestinian activism and has been targeted in the US government's crackdown on campus advocacy. Earlier this week, Judge Michael Fabriaz ruled that the Trump administration's detention of Khalil on national security grounds was likely unconstitutional and ordered his release. However, the government refused to free him, citing alternative claims related to his green card application. Khalil's lawyers argue these claims are a pretext to keep him detained. Civil rights advocates and public figures have called for Khalil's release, condemning what they describe as an unjust and politically motivated detention. We move away from immigration but stay in North America. In the US, Republican senators are pushing to curb judges' powers to block federal policies. A new provision in President Donald Trump's massive tax and spending bill, dubbed the Big Beautiful Bill, would require those suing the government to post a costly bond before a judge can halt a policy. The Senate version differs from the House, which passed a bill last month to limit judges' contempt powers against officials who defy court orders. Senator Chuck Grassley says this move ensures plaintiffs cover government costs if injunctions are overturned. But critics, including Democrats like Senator Dick Durbin, argue this is a direct attack on judicial checks. designed to shield President Trump from legal accountability. The White House has already instructed agencies to demand bonds in such cases, making legal challenges harder to file. The Republican-led Senate is using special rules to pass this bill with just a simple majority. Moving on now, Japan and the United States have explored the possibility of a trade agreement, according to Japan's top tariff negotiator, Ryoshi Akazawa. Speaking in Washington after the 6th round of tariff negotiations, Akazawa said he held separate talks with US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. He described the exchange as very detailed but declined to comment on how close the two sides are to reaching a deal. Akazawa also did not say whether an agreement could be finalised when Prime Minister Ishiba meets US President Donald Trump on the sidelines of the G7 summit in Canada. Japan faces a 24% tariff rate starting in July unless a deal is reached. It also is seeking exemptions from the proposed 25% tariffs on its auto exports. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Ishiba and President Trump held a phone call discussing tariffs, according to Japan's foreign ministry. Well, staying with Japanese-US relations, President Donald Trump has approved Nippon Steel's $14.9 billion acquisition of US steel, clearing the way for one of the largest foreign takeovers in the American steel industry. Trump signed an executive order saying the tie-up could move forward if the companies sign an agreement with the Treasury Department resolving national security concerns posed by the deal. The companies then announced they had signed the agreement, fulfilling the conditions of Trump's directive and effectively garnering approval for the merger. The deal includes $11 billion in new investment by 2028. Nippon Steel, Japan's largest steel maker, will acquire a 100% stake in US Steel. The Japanese government welcomed the approval. Staying in North America, Kanye West made a surprise appearance at Manhattan Federal Court, arriving in all white to show support for Sean Diddy Combs amid his sex trafficking trial. West spent just over 30 minutes inside but did not enter the main courtroom. Instead, he watched proceedings from a private overflow room, according to reports. The visit sent media into a frenzy, with reporters scrambling across floors trying to spot the rapper. West, who shook hands with Combs' son, declined to say if he would testify and left without comment. Meanwhile, juror number 6 was dismissed after giving conflicting stories about his residence, prompting Diddy's lawyers to criticise the move as reducing jury diversity. Prosecutors defended the decision, citing honesty and fairness. Meanwhile, the trial is heading into its final stages. Prosecutors plan to rest their case next week after calling 28 witnesses since May the 12th. And with bombshell testimonies from Cassie Ventura and others already out, this is shaping up to be one of the music industry's and pop culture's biggest ever courtroom battles. Well, that's all we have time for. We'll continue to bring you more from the Middle East and across the world very soon.